Hi, I'm Malessa Rambarran.
And I'm Candice Milano.
Welcome back to The Build Up, presented by Brown Harris Stevens, where we discuss the secrets of building wealth through real estate.
Today, we're joined by Bobby Fijan, a true multidisciplinary real estate investor who shares how understanding and optimizing floor plans is a real game changer. Plus, we're going to dive into a fascinating headline about how single women are actually driving the luxury real estate market right now.
So that's a really interesting topic that, single women are driving the real estate market, the luxury real estate market this year.
Yes, this is a really great thing to see, obviously, especially as women. Right now, women are representing 18% of home buyers in recent years, and they're really purchasing homes, whether it's a primary or a secondary home, maybe it's a vacation property, to really assert their financial wealth, their independence, and just overall, this is a really great new trend that we're seeing.
But what's really interesting about that article is that a lot of women are not just buying properties, but they're buying properties with wellness in mind. So think about, home spas, home office, home gyms, home spas. So it's really empowering to see that women are really taking that wellness game to the next level here.
Yes, and it's not just wellness in the sense of those kind of amenities that you mentioned, but also in the way that the properties are built. We're seeing a focus towards more sustainable, eco-friendly constructed homes, which is really interesting. And so again, these women are looking for properties that really match their values and their lifestyle.
Well, you just built a home, right? And wasn't that like a big part of it too? Like I know you have the sauna, the gym. So how did that impact you?
Yes. I mean, when part of the reason we purchased the home was because of the amenities that it already had. Of course, we improved upon it, but tennis is really important, a big way that, I get my exercise, also pool for swimming as well. And then, we really invested in one of the best saunas into the home because that's one of the best ways to, improve your health as well as a full gym. So as well as also a garden, because again, it's not just about exercising, it's also about what you eat. And so all of these amenities are really important for myself and for my family. And that was a big part of how we prioritize which home we bought, which was, could it accommodate these types of amenities? And
also too, here in the city, we're seeing a lot of new wellnesses place, they're popping up a lot of throughout the city. And that's something that I also prioritize. So I can definitely see where this whole trend is going. But you spoke of a garden. Are you going to be gardening?
I'm not going to be Martha Stewart or anything anytime soon. Fine. But being able to have, access to fresh food is really quality, I think is really important to us.
For sure. It's been really interesting to see how, this has really shifted because, of course, you have the primary criteria of location, appreciation value, all of that. But this new consideration for wellness, I think that's something that we're going to continue to see. And a lot of builders that we work with, we're also advising them that they should be considering like saunas, like a wellness space versus not just a gym. You can't just have a gym anymore.
Right. It's no longer enough. And I think that we mentioned that these women are looking for homes that match their current lifestyle and values. And a big lifestyle shift for almost everyone has been some new form of work from home. And so if you are spending more time at home, whether if you live in a city, then you're building amenities, or if it's a single family home, the property amenities are become that much more used and important. And so that's also a big part of why we're seeing this new trend because people are spending more time at home than they were before. And so it's a great thing to know because obviously as we are always ourselves and our audience and our investors are always trying to stay on top of like what new trends, who are we building homes for, whether they're for rent or for sale, you need to know what the market is calling for. And so this is something that's emerged relatively recently. So it's key that we talk about it because again, it will impact how we think about future investments that we make.
For sure. And, not to go off on a tangent, but I think more so we're seeing in the news and media about how important it is for self-care, right? Like we're talking more about the foods we're eating, how important it is, and so I think that's why we're seeing this shift.
Yeah. I mean, as millennial women ourselves, we find this, topic extra relatable and empowering. And so hopefully we can see more of this in the near future.
For sure.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. We work with Brown Harris Stevens and many other top real estate firms, staging their homes to sell quickly and at the highest price possible. Our staging is affordable without sacrificing quality or design. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
When we first started Excel Real Property Management 11 years ago, we did so with the intention of protecting the investment community. Here at Excel Real Property Management, we focus specifically on serving the needs of individual apartments, townhouse, and small multifamily building owners both in Manhattan and select neighborhoods of Brooklyn. Our services encompass everything: rent collection, expense payment, handling maintenance and repair, turnover between tenants, insurance needs. Literally anything that an investor would typically handle him or herself, we take care of for them. Whether you hold one individual apartment or a rental building that houses 20 units, Excel is here to help with all of your specific needs.
So today we're joined by Bobby Fijan, a true multidisciplinary real estate professional. Bobby's unique perspective comes from his diverse experience and also co-founding Form Developers, a company that uses data-driven technology to optimize apartment floor plans. In this episode, we'll dive deep into his journey in real estate, discuss the power of smart floor plans design for maximizing your ROI, and uncover valuable lessons he's learned along the way. Bobby, welcome to the Build Up.
I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for that introduction.
Of course, and we're very excited to have this talk with you here today. And but before we get into that, why don't you share your journey into real estate investing and how you ultimately got your start?
It was sort of an accident, I'd say, both into real estate and into entrepreneurship. I studied like history and film at first in school, and then eventually economics. And I'd say like while I was in graduate school, I ran into a friend who said that he and a few other people were starting a real estate development company. So it was intriguing, and I just started like helping out. And by the end of the summer, I knew that's what I wanted to do, mostly in terms of working with those people. And I'd say like the idea of like working on creating something new out of or revitalizing something that was one way and was going to be turned to something else. So honestly, it was sort of an accident. And this was back in 2000 and end of 2010, beginning of 2011. So it was a very different sort of market than we have now. And I don't know, I guess I just got married. My wife was a nurse, so she made a little bit of money, and it just felt like a time when I was younger, just to sort of like jump in and try something. So I've been an entrepreneur and I've been in real estate ever since. But the story of how I got into it is just honestly thoroughly an accident. And I'd say it's something that I fell in love with after, and I fell in love with it, like I think like many people do, when I got good at it. And then it got a lot more interesting.
I love that. Yeah. Sometimes accidents are the best way to get started into something. Yeah. And so, you know, since you've started, you've worn so many hats in real estate investing, from design to finance to development to prop tech. So as you kind of look comprehensively at all that you've done in this industry, how has that really shaped your approach to investing?
The part that shaped my approach to investing the most has been, frankly, like those first like few years. And that's because in starting with a few different people, and we started like with very little money, you sort of have to do everything. And I'd say like, I think I have had success in prop tech, and then in some of the different other finance parts now, partly because like at the end of the day, like I know what it is like to do all the different functions that happen in real estate. So like you can read about it, but there's only one way, like where you learn, like don't give out your cell phone to like tenants, right? Like by making that mistake, right? Like there's only one way you learn like what it is like to get, late night property management calls, or and to sort of, I guess, get a little bit into it, like on sort of the floor plan side, like the reason why I sort of realized like, oh my gosh, floor plans matter is because we were pricing a whole bunch of different units, and you're like, my spreadsheet says these are all 700 square foot 1 bedrooms, but one of them is clearly better than the other. So like there needs to be some way of translating like what is true to like the spreadsheet world. So, I mean, my background was thoroughly like in the finance, and I've always like loved data, and I'd say that's kind of like the way that I think about it. But I think that having to do all of the different jobs, like I said, from raising capital to leasing apartments to doing property management stuff to doing turns in student housing and multifamily, I think is like the core of like why I've been even somewhat successful.
You actually touched a little bit on that in terms of floor plans, but in 2019, you co-founded Form Developers, a data technologies company specializing in optimizing apartment floor plans, right? And, we work with a lot of developers and we do a lot of, pre-construction planning. So we understand the importance of floor plans, right? So how important would you say it is in unit design, and how does it get investors an edge in maximizing profitability?
A good floor plan is like by definition, like one that is liked by the market. And that is going to depend like on what kind of a market you're in and who you're specifically renting to. So I'd say like, you weren't suggesting this, but I get a question. A lot of people saying like, Bobby, what's the best floor plan? What's the best floor plan for this project? It's like, well, it all depends. Like, who is it for? So I'd say like that is the most, like, I think about floor plans and floor plan data as like a way of thinking about like of addressing the question of like, who am I building for? And I'd say like the investors who do well, like know that question, like incredibly, like an incredibly detailed way. Like, where do they work? Do they have kids? Are they thinking about having kids? Like what specific companies do they work at? And floor plans are just one way where that manifests. I would say I do not think that it is possible for an investor or a developer to like know who they are renting to or building for without it having some effect on the floor plan. So one of the reasons why like I look at floor plans is because it to me is one of the clearest like signals of like whether or not that work has been done. Like you can't say I am building like a highly niche, like specialized, tailored, like great product. And if I look at your floor plan, I can't tell whether it's from Manhattan or Amarillo. Right. And that those two things are just like incongruous. So that to me is like where I think that they are in terms of like the difference like that it like practically makes it's multiple percent, like I don't know, like tens of percents of like difference in revenue if you get it wrong. And if you build for the wrong like group, things can be unsellable. And again, kind of going back to the question I had before on how I got my start, like I learned that lesson like many other people learn like the hard way. Like I did one project and we did these floor plans that were great and it was like right downtown. And then we did another project that was just outside the city. And we said like, well, those floor plans are great. Like, let's import and use those again. And it turns out they just weren't nearly successful because there were different people who wanted to live in different places. So I'd say like floor plans are a means to an end or a way of thinking about like, who is this for? And then once you decide who it's for, your floor plans will change.
Sure. We couldn't agree more. I think after location, getting the layout right is the most important part, because if you don't build a good product for, again, your target demographic, everything is downhill from there. I don't care how nice the finishes are, what your amenities are, if it's not a livable space that, to your point, is in demand. For example, we had a project that was built before COVID. And so at the time, the market was for people who were going to the office and spending a lot of time outside of their homes. And then so the homes were designed very efficiently, which is the nice way of saying small. And then obviously we came to market after COVID, which no one could have predicted, despite, how seasoned of an investor you might be. And then all of our units were just really tight and really small for people looking to work from home. And so obviously that's something that is always going to be part of risk because it was outside of everyone's control. But to your point, the floor plan is so critical in getting it right. And there's a lot of that. And you mentioned, a lot of what you've learned is just by trial and error. And I think part of our show and our goal is to help newer investors avoid some of those mistakes that we've all made. And yes, we're all going to make mistakes, but you can learn a certain amount from other people's experience. So to that point, what would you say are the most critical factors that newer investors often overlook when they're evaluating a multifamily property to acquire it?
I think the main mistake that people make is just like not trusting common sense, like enough, right? Like if you were to tell someone, so I've trained a whole lot of different like analysts who are really smart, who are coming from different sorts of schools, and you ask them like, how much is an apartment in this area? Or like, how much would we build things for? Or we're looking at like Excel stuff. And they always end up trying to give these answers that are like highly technical, when in fact, like the answer is like, what would you pay for it? Like, and what do you think is nice? And I think, I'd say, so that being said, like you have to be cognizant of like where comps are and what financial returns are and things like that. But I think too many people end up outsmarting themselves on like, what is something worth? It's just like, is it nice? Not like, and again, like my entire lane is like floor plan data and optimizing those things, but it has to be like undergirded by like sanity and common sense. So I think most people will be fine if you say like, well, would I pay? And then the other thing I'd also say to like, for people to pay attention to is like, would I pay this amount of rent? Like one of the reasons why investors care about rent per square foot is because we're constructing rent per square or cost per square foot. So we want rent per square foot, but renters pay chunk rents. So at the end of the day, it's like, does someone want to pay $5,000 for this when something is $4,000 across the street? Maybe, right? Like, or if it is, like, it has to have like a very different reason. And I'd say the other reason why like I love focusing on things like floor plans is because that's a lot more immutable, right? Like, when two floor plans are the same and the only difference is finishes or amenities, you can get a rent premium. But as soon as a new building comes in the neighborhood or like things get a little bit dated, like that premium goes away. Things, more immutable characteristics, things like you'd see in a floor plan, put you into different kinds of categories. And that's why like both on social media and then on other projects I've talked about too, like I give the fairly like straightforward example of like, most people, I think, would prefer more closet space to like a dedicated work area. I think that's generally true, that there are more people. But there are some people who would prefer a dedicated workspace over a larger closet space. And so if you have a differentiated product, then you can be better for that subset of people. Anyway, I'd say like, yeah, the short version is just practice common sense and think like a renter, and as much as possible, think like the person who you're actually renting to, and think like a renter, but also don't impose your own personal choices onto different things too. Like all the other mistakes that I generally have people say is like, they'll either say, well, I like this or I like that. And you could be correct, or even your architect or designer could say that too. But they're not renting it. Right. So, or there's only one person. So what you really need to do is like, if you are building for nurses who live in a certain area because the hospital is right there, or nurses or medical school residents and some grad students or early workers, it's like, what does that person want? Great. Give them something. And the further you get away from that, I think the far more likely you are to make really bad mistakes.
Agreed. Again, just really trying to define your target market and building for that in every way, from the floor plan to the finishes and so forth. So you've also worked on office to residential conversions, where there's known to be a very high loss factor on these floor plates, right, when going from commercial to residential use. And there's even more need for floor plan optimization. So have you been able to use form developers as a way to make office to residential conversions more feasible?
Yes and no. I mean, like, I'd say like so some of the very first projects that I ever got to work on were office to residential conversions. And I'd say like the mindset of thinking about the differences in floor plan data came out of office to residential conversions, partly because when a building isn't built for residential, you end up with far more floor plans and far more variations than typical. So I think on one of the first projects I did, we had like just over 100 apartments, but there were like 40 different floor plans. And so when you have all these different variations, that to me is like where you're trying to look for data things to justify the common sense. It's like, well, how do you put like a value on, I don't know, there being extra 6 inches in the living room? Well, you could tabulate that and say, well, 6 inches equals this in rent. But so I guess all that to say, like, yes, I have worked on, I started an office residential projects. I'm working on some more office residential projects now. But the complicated part of that is like, you can't necessarily like apply rules in the same way because the building is the building. And the other main part I'd say that drives office to residential conversions more is like, the window locations are the window locations. So you can only put new walls in between those windows typically, because you're just not allowed to change the exterior. So I'd say like it is helpful, but you don't get quite as much. It doesn't drive like what you can do as much as other factors.
Yeah, it's really tough with conversions. I mean, it's not like you're starting from fresh, right? And we've had a lot of challenges like that here too in the city. Of course, there's a shortage on housing, and so they're trying to find all different types of ways and how to like utilize old buildings and all of that. But oftentimes, developers just can't make it work because again, the plans are really hard. So
yeah, and in addition to the plans being tough, another issue with these conversions is the current construction costs and interest rates, and so that's not a problem specific to just office to residential conversions. It's kind of a development and market wide problem. So we love hearing from investors like yourself who are still building and still converting. How are you navigating these market changes that are making it very difficult?
It is a very tough environment. It is a very tough environment. And I would say that everything that is going forward right now is going forward because there is time like in the development. So like there is certainly nothing that I'm rushing forward with on construction at the moment. There are things that are, I'd say the good part of development is that it takes a really long time. And at the moment, like I've got a bunch of things that are slowly working their way through that process. But if I had something that I was going right now, I would probably not push pedal to the metal, let's go, because costs are really high. And the other thing is like costs are really uncertain. So there are some that are in the middle, but there's nothing that I'm pushing forward to go right now other than, like I said, trying to start a company to drive down some of the manufacturing costs.
No, that's very resourceful. And obviously it's not within everyone's ability to maximize, and start a new business with manufacturing, but it's definitely showing how you're thinking creatively amidst these current market conditions. So, whatever it takes.
Yes. And, you touched a little bit on this before, but we want to go back to that. But, you've obviously been in the business for a little while now, right? Since 2019, especially with this company. So what was one mistake or one lesson learned that, you made in your early days of real estate investing that really taught you a valuable lesson?
I don't think that it can be overstated, like how important it is to pick like good partners, right? Like you want to pick and work with good people because real estate development is going to be hard, and things are going to go wrong. And you want to know, like, you want to be in the middle of it, like with people who you can put your heads down together and just like work forward. So, like, I mean, it's something that as I get older into the business, like, I think it just gets even more important of like, you want to go into battle with the people who you feel comfortable and you can trust on that part, because like I said, you can be certain that things will go wrong. So I think that's the one thing I would tell people was like, things will go wrong and you don't know what they are. And I'd say the other part that's really difficult, like in real estate development to do, especially like in any conversions, is like how, and I grant, like, I've never worked at a really large development shop before too. So there are certainly firms that like know how to build like the same building over and over and over again better than I have. It's not a experience that I've done. I've always been a smaller mid-size, like sort of local type developer. Even as I've expanded in different markets, I'm never doing like the largest scale projects. I think like it is very difficult to assume that like because things went in correctly in certain projects that you can transit all those lessons. Like each project is so different that there's no real like sort of like standard operating procedure other than there are general things. And like I said, with partners, you just have to have the right team. So for anyone who's starting or anyone who's newer, like, I think like the most important thing is like, if you are less experienced, then the people on your team need to be far more experienced, but even more than experienced, like you need to have people you can just like trust. So I'd say like trust is more important than price.
Yeah, I mean, we couldn't agree more. Malessa and I obviously are partners. We've been working together for a decade. And, like you said, it's the foundation for building anything successfully. So that's a great piece of advice. We'll end with that because I think it's a great lasting impression. And we agree, we started from the bottom ourselves too. And it's really the only way to get into something. So thank you so much, Bobby, for your time. We really appreciate this conversation, and we'll look forward to watching all that you're going to achieve.
Thank you very much. It's great to talk to you.
Hey, it's Stephen Bailey from Roadway Moving and Storage. As an official moving partner of Brown Harris Stevens, we know that your clients deserve more than just a move. At Roadway Moving and Storage, we turn moving into an experience they will love. From specialized services to a white glove treatment, we've got it all covered. When you choose Roadway, you're choosing a peace of mind for your clients. Plus, our referral program is the most rewarding in the industry. Want to learn more? Shoot me an email at steven@roadwaymoving.com or visit roadwaymoving.com.
Do you have a big move coming up? I'm Scott Nadler with Cross Country Mortgage, and I've got the loan to match your dream home. Whether it's your first or your fifth, I'll make the process quick and easy. Call me today. Let's make it happen.
Today's conversation with Bobby was packed with so many valuable insights, from how you maximize a floor plan to having more innovative strategies when it comes to investing. All of this together really makes the difference in maximizing profitability. So we're really grateful for him for sharing all of that today.
And thank you for tuning in to this episode with Bobby. Be sure to subscribe for more expert insight into real estate investing. And if you found today's conversation helpful, be sure to leave a review for us.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute tax, legal, or investment advice.
For specific recommendations, please consult with your financial, legal, or tax professional.
The phone, or always leave your text on red? Leave your text on red.
Built the Corky with a $1,000 loan.
Tell us a little bit about how you actually came from.
Welcome to the build-up, John Roa.
Thanks for having me.
We're coming to you here from Studio 1873.
It's about 57% over.
70 million. So then, good. Cheers.